I've received the question a few times about whether or not it is now too late to add Tesla and or Palantir to your portfolio. The short answer to this question, in my opinion, is no, not at all. But let me fully explain. Firstly, it's important to understand where this concern and worry is coming from. Why are people worried that it is now too late? When we look back on a stock chart of any company that has been doing well, and this holds true for Palantir and Tesla too, we see that they've either hit all-time highs fairly recently or they're still hovering around that all-time high level. For Tesla, this was around 2 years ago, and for Palantir, it was shortly after their IPO in January 2021. And it's hard for us investors to actually imagine that the stock will be able to go above that all-time high again. When we're looking at a stock chart, it kind of is this psychological block that you see the all-time high as the cap for the company, as the limit of the stock price, and that is not the case. We view that all-time high as the creme de la creme, and if you missed out on riding that wave up to that all-time high, then you've missed the opportunity of a lifetime. But this is just simply not the case. For example, Warren Buffett, one of the greatest investors of all time. Now, when you think about Warren Buffett, you'll very much think that he has had a lot of investing success. However, Warren Buffett only started investing into Apple in 2016. 2016, that wasn't really that long ago. And this was a whole 9 years after the release of the first iPhone. This felt too late. Apple had already risen by something crazy, like 29,000% by that point. How could it go up anymore? Surely Apple had sort of reached its stock price limit, but Warren Buffett certainly didn't think so. He saw this as a company that was simply dominating the market. He was seeing the switch happening across the entire world, where people were switching to having computers in their pocket. They were switching to the smartphone. And although Apple did have good competitors, i.e. Samsung, and actually I think that Apple didn't even have the majority of the market share back in 2016, what Warren Buffett was able to see was that Apple was growing in popularity. They were building an ecosystem. They were building a loyal consumer base. And more importantly than perhaps any of that to Warren Buffett was the revenue that they were making. Even though they perhaps weren't selling the most phones compared to some of their competitors, they were bringing in the most money because they were branding their phones as high end. Everyone wanted one and people were willing to pay the premium. He understood the business at a fundamental level and he understood it in the context of consumers. And that's why he was not too late. He knew that Apple were only just getting started, although to everyone else, it probably seemed like they had already run their race. They had already reached their high. Looking back, we know that certainly was not the case. And I think this principle extends across to Tesla. Perhaps not as much to Palantir, given that Palantir is more of a new public company, but certainly to Tesla. When you look at the stock, you probably think that only those investors that got in prior to 2019 could do well. But I think that it's really important in this case to separate the stock price from the company. Those are separate things. Sometimes they marry up, sometimes they certainly do not for a very long time. In my opinion, and this is all this is, my opinion, Tesla still has a lot to come. They are very much only just getting started. Just like Warren Buffett saw in Apple all those years ago, I think Tesla is still very early on in their growth story. From an EV point of view, so just looking at their core electric vehicle side of their business. Now they are no longer just a car company. They are much more than that. But if we just take their core offering, their EV products, the switch from ICE vehicles, so the internal combustion engine vehicles that are traditionally used and we are all used to, the switch from those to EVs is only just really getting started. And at the moment, even though it feels like, to us in this Tesla niche, Teslas are everywhere and they're so popular and, we always notice them on the road. That's because we want to notice them. Our eyes are sort of looking for them. But actually, Tesla has only taken a small market share of the possibility that's out there. As more and more people move towards making that switch and are forced to make that switch, which car are they going to opt for? Tesla's an option. Tesla is a fantastic option. So they have a lot more market share to actually capture. They will never take 100% of the market. It is very naive to think that. There will always be competitors and there will always be people that want other options. But what they are doing is they're making themselves one of the best options. And they are slowly fighting off any competitors. Or should I say at this point, competitors are actually fighting off themselves? The important thing to note here is that making a compelling EV is actually really challenging to do. And more importantly than that, it costs a lot. And this is where Tesla is far ahead. They are actually able to generate and turn a profit on their electric vehicles. Many other companies that are putting out very nice EVs, really nice ones that you'd probably want to own. Great for a consumer. But as an investor, you've got to know that that company is not actually making a profit or not making a good profit on these cars that they're selling. And this is really dangerous for other companies in the long term, especially. What a lot of them are doing at the moment is they are making their profit and their money from their ICE vehicle sales, so from their traditional cars. And then what they're doing is they're taking that money, that profit, and they're pumping it into their electric vehicle side, which isn't making very much money right now, if any. But as the switch happens and as we push towards moving the population towards the electric vehicle, and they are no longer selling or not allowed to sell as many ICE vehicles, what does that mean for that business? Well, it doesn't look good unless they can figure out a way to actually make a profit on their EVs soon. So now let's just say that we completely forget about their EV side of the business. From what I've just said, I think that we can agree that there is still a lot for them to do in that area of their business. And based on that, it's probably not too late to get into Tesla stock. Again, just my opinion. But let's now move on from their electric vehicles and think about their other areas. So they have many, many different business areas. If you don't know Tesla at all, they do produce electric vehicles. Of course, we know this, but they also have an energy sector. They're also working on autonomous driving, full self-driving. They have a supercomputer. They're going to eventually have a humanoid robot. They are getting into lithium refinery. There's so many different areas of their business that at this point in time, it kind of hurts your head to sit and think about all of them. So once they've displaced the car industry with electric vehicles, they will then move on to disrupt the transportation industry. And they will do this by switching on their robo-taxi fleet. So essentially a fleet of Tesla vehicles that will have the full self-driving software. They will be able to drive themselves, and they will have a fleet of these basically acting like taxis. And it will be a lot cheaper than taxis. If I remember, I will link a video, a card up here somewhere, and you can watch me explain that in more detail and how they'll actually make money from that. Now this seems pretty mad. The robo-taxi fleet idea, it seems like so far-fetched, but you've got to remember, so did having a computer in your pocket. That seemed crazy before it was a thing. Now it's second nature to us. We all just get out our smartphones at any given time. We search for stuff, we look at the maps, we do lots of things all the time on our smartphones. But at some point in history, that was just a weird idea. Like surely not that sort of idea, but it happened. Innovation drove it to happen. And I think that will be the same for the robo-taxi fleet as well. And then they will move this forward and they will transfer this knowledge into their bot from their cars. Now, at this point in time, Tesla vehicles aren't really vehicles as such. They are more software on wheels, robots on wheels. So they will be able to take everything that they've done for the full self-driving and basically, this is really simplified, right? And they will basically transplant it, if you will, into their Tesla bot, Optimus. And then, like I just mentioned, we have their energy sector. So when you're thinking about what a good price for Tesla stock is, and whether or not it is too late to now invest into this company, you need to define to yourself how you're defining the market potential. If you decide that Tesla is just a car company, and I would disagree, but if you decide that, then you have to value it as just a car company. And when you do that analysis, you might come to the conclusion that the highest possible value per share should be $300 because that's the market cap potential of that market, etc., etc. But then if you think that Tesla is not just a car company, and now the evidence that's out there would definitely back you on that one, you need to look at all the markets that Tesla are getting themselves into. You need to look at the potential in those markets and decide what you think Tesla should be valued at now and in the future based on that. At this point, you need to start thinking about whether all this stuff has already happened or whether it's lined up for Tesla's future. Up until recently, they were very focused on drawing their revenue primarily from their EV sales. But I don't think that will continue to be the case. I very much believe we're going to see a point in time, a shift, where their EV business sector actually dwindles compared to all the other things that they are doing. And I believe a lot of people will be really surprised by that. And at that point, it might switch in their mind that this is You know, this is a AI based company. This is not a car company. Then once you've decided whether you think it's too late to add Tesla to your portfolio, and we're going to get onto Palantir in just a second, you then need to come up with a plan as to how you are going to buy it. Do you think that it's actually overpriced now, and you would feel more comfortable waiting for it to pull back and come down a little bit before you actually make the purchase? This could happen, of course it could. Tesla is a very volatile stock. It is heavily moved and influenced, big upswings, big downswings by Elon Musk posting on X, by earnings coming out, by headlines, by noise. It does move very fast, very quickly. But then, of course, it may never come down to the levels that you're believing you want to buy in at. To make this decision easier, you need to decide what type of investor you are and you want to be. There's no right or wrong way to really do this. It literally comes down to your investing strategy. You may decide that you only want to buy Tesla stock when it is down by like 20% from its current levels, and then you'll sell when it reaches somewhat of a high. Then you'll buy in again lower, and then you'll sell out again higher, like this sort of momentum investor. That might be what you want to do. For me personally, that is not my style, and that would stress me out a lot. But it is a legit style, and people do make money from doing that, and some people are driven by doing that. I much prefer the buy and hold mentality. You could decide that you do want to do more of a buy and hold, but actually you only want to buy when the stock price drops a certain level again, and then you'll wait for another dip to add more to your portfolio. Personally, I just like to buy whenever I have cash, and this does happen regularly, and then I keep some cash on the sidelines so that I can deploy that if there is a significant drop, just so I can take that, advantage of that opportunity. I don't tend to wait for it to drop like by 20% or anything like that, just because it has a tendency to move so fast in the upward direction. I wouldn't want to be sitting there anxiously waiting and then just miss out on my chance to buy in at a decent price. It also depends on the risk that you're willing to take on and the stage of life and investing stage that you're at. For me right now, I can take on a lot of risk, and I also am in the growth accumulation stage. This means that I don't need to sell any of my positions. I don't need the money from selling to sustain my lifestyle, and I don't need any income from it right now. So I can just really focus on accumulating shares. Whereas someone that is perhaps in retirement or looking to retire in, let's say, 2 years, they may decide that actually now is not a good time for them to enter Tesla stock. In terms of Palantir, my answer is much the same. Now is a great time to buy, providing that it fits in with your risk tolerance and your investing strategy. Because in my opinion, Palantir will be worth a lot more in the future than it is right now, given all of the catalysts that are lined up and how the market is actually shifting towards needing, not wanting, needing to utilize data better. Just like it wouldn't really be an option not to have a smartphone nowadays, that you would miss out on so many opportunities, and there would just be that disconnect there. And I think a lot of people wouldn't actually be able to live without a smartphone, which is a whole debate in itself, whether that's right or wrong, but I do think that's the case. And now it's going to become that you need to be able to understand and use your data, because data is now the language of the world, and companies that are not able to do that will be dropping to the bottom of the pile. I'm investing in the innovation, the team, the idea, the products, and understanding that short term, the market may have its say and cause some problems. But overall, with a long-term mindset, I'll do all right. So what I'm saying is define your investing strategy and then decide whether or not you think it's too late. If your strategy is very much with Tesla and Palantir to sell when the stock has reached its high, then you need to know when that high has been reached. You need to be able to somewhat time the market. Firstly, that's really difficult. But even so, with a stock like Palantir, it has gone up so much so quickly that it might not carry on doing that. That's a risk you run. If you get in now and you're not already in Palantir and you do want to sell when it reaches a high, that high this time round may have already happened. Like, I don't know that, but it could have. And there's also the argument that right now it is overvalued. Again, that's a decision you need to make yourself, but that is definitely an argument that's out there. However, if you are wanting to buy and hold, like me, and you are accumulating as many shares as you can right now, so that in your future, those shares will be worth more than they currently are, and you would have made money that way, then I don't think there is such thing as a bad time to buy. Sure, there is such thing as more optimal times to buy. Ultimately you want more shares for the same amount of money, and that happens when the stock dips. That is a more optimal time to buy a company, but I don't think there's any such thing as, now is a bad time to buy and you should wait 6 months to get into this stock. In my opinion, just start accumulating. If this is a company you have strong conviction for, Tesla and or Palantir, then ultimately you want to have as many shares as you possibly can. And just ask yourself this simple question: is there another option out there that is a better use of your money right now? If the answer is no, then it is not too late to buy what you're considering. Just start accumulating. If you want to help support this channel and help me keep pumping out videos regularly that can be really, really valuable for you and other investors, then consider becoming a channel member, or even have a look at the Patreon offering. And if you can't do any of that, then that's absolutely fine. Please just give this video a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and maybe even share this video or my other content with people that you want to start investing for their own financial future. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another one very shortly.